So, hello everyone. We have now only few chapters left of the book, and today we cover chapter 10. And then in the second half of what is remaining of the day, we will, or you will actually, discuss a case which I have already sent you information about. It was, I mentioned it in the schedule. It's on page 237. So, how many have read the case? Only no one. That's too bad. Sorry? I mentioned it clearly. So, that's a big disadvantage if no one has read the case, which you are supposed to do. Anyway, let's start with something we can tackle, at least for the time being. Chapter 10. Being an effective project manager. We have talked so much until now about the project itself, about the structure of projects, about how to go about when planning, estimating, scheduling, etc. But we haven't talked so much about the project manager himself. So now we are going to do that, and we are going to do that as well as talking about whether that person is a leader or a manager. And just to remind us, this is the wrong one. We are actually here now, talking about leadership, and then in a week we will talk about teams, and then we start to sort of see the end of the course. Now you might remember this one. You might recall this model here. Please take your seats quietly. We have, once again. We have the external environment, which helps us to identify opportunities and threats. Those opportunities normally lead to actions, reverse strategies and new goals, and that also leads to new projects. So on the on one side, we have the business strategy aspect of managing a company. Of course, we have that included in a management process, which is ongoing at all times. And then we have two sides of every project, soft, or you can say social, and technical. The technical ones being the scope, the work breakdown structure, and all that. The socio-culture being leadership, among other things. And then, of course, this all ends in project. This is the triangle, which is so linked to the work of the project manager. So, when we talk about the socio-cultural aspect of running project, that is when we talk about leadership. How are we as leaders? How are we as managers? And how are we as project managers? Now, there are many people whom you have to deal with when you're running a project. You have to deal with all kinds of stakeholders. And you, as the manager of running the project, you have to you can say build relationships with everyone, all of them. And those relationships might be different. There might be different relationships. Some people you have to meet on a regular basis, some you have to deal with through communication by email, etc. Different ways. I've mentioned that before, and but just to remind us, there are very few projects where you only deal with one person, the client. There are always some other people involved whom you have to deal with. So today we are going to talk about key issues like managing versus leading. We're going to see videos showing us a manager and another one showing us a leader. We're going to talk about what is the difference. And we are going to focus a bit on management as task coping with complexity, while the leadership is coping with change. We're going to talk a bit about what is included in those two sentences or statements. Sometimes this goes hand in hand. Sometimes you can actually find a person who is kind of a visionary, sees into the future and can actually foresee change, and is a clear leader in that sense, can sort of create, let's say, a common atmosphere about a certain issue and have people follow in that direction. And then at the same time, this person might also have the capabilities of a manager who can cope with complexity. But normally, you can find normally those two sort of characteristics are not found in the same person. But as I said, it happens. I just picked this up from the internet. This is something you will get. I'll put these slides in my school later today. I found this. It shows, of course, a difference. It's a bit sort of exaggerated. But let's take a look. Boss, me being the manager, boss drives employees, while the leader coaches employees. You can see from which side the author of this this drawing is. He's clearly on the leadership side. But anyway, boss depends on authority. The leader depends on goodwill. Two different things. Boss seeks authority so that he can guide you, or let's say drive you. I don't know about this one. Inspires fear, while the leader generates enthusiasm. The boss says I, while the leader says we. There's a big difference, a huge difference. And we have seen this many times when we have managing directors introducing some projects by big companies, and he or she says I am now introducing, etc. I have now been engaged in a development work, etc. So the boss places blame for the breakdown, while the leader fixes the breakdown, knows how it's done, shows how it's done, uses people and develops people. That's a quite a statement. So I'm just showing this to you. It's not necessarily something you have to take for granted. Takes credit because, and this goes hand in hand, says I, so that he or she can take the credit for something that is nicely done, while the leader gives credit. The boss commands, gives instructions, directs people, makes sure that people are doing what they are supposed to do, while the leader asks. And the boss says go, and the leader says let's go. Do you see a difference? Do you see different characteristics? Are you familiar with this kind of a boss and this kind of a leader? Can you see someone immediately in your minds that fits the description? Okay, let's take a look at someone who is... you've seen their slides, I guess, or what? Maybe not. Okay. Let's take a look. Have you seen this movie? No, someone hasn't. Okay, if you haven't, you should. It's a good movie, not just for this clip, but just in general. But what happened in this clip? What happened just there? Two things we need to realize when we talk about leadership. What happened? The first word is change. They didn't want to fight because they wanted to live, but he changed their atmosphere. He changed their sort of view on things. So they saw something else. They saw something differently, okay? So at the end, they were all willing and they were all supporting. And what did that give him? That's the second word. What did you see in this? What was characterizing the way he sort of convinced them? He showed them a vision or showed them something. Leaders normally show a vision to those who are. But what in which way did he do this? What would be the second word? Power. He gained power. He showed strength. He convinced them that they would, have to go to war to show the English that they were not willing to give in on their freedom. So he gained power. He was extremely strong. They would do anything for him. Do you agree? So two things happened. He changed the view or the idea they had. And that is what a leader does, in a way. A leader must be able to tell you about something, let's say in the beginning of a project, introducing what the project is about and what will be the final deliverable. And you must be so excited about it that you're willing to do whatever it takes. Spend 10 months with 10 people in a dedicated project team to work and achieve whatever this project is about. You are absolutely focused because the leader has shown you a vision and you are agreeing with that vision. So you're willing to give in give all the whatever it takes. Now here is another interesting thing, completely different, although it's not a video, but I just want to show you. No, not this one. This one you should actually read. It takes only a few minutes. The Caring Leader. It's an article from this web magazine. And it talks about, or this guy is talking about a leader who was so extremely strong. It's within the military. But the leader was so strong in his eyes because he showed so much care. He was always caring for his fellow military persons. In a business, that would be for his staff. He was caring all the time. And through caring, he gained extremely, or let's say, a lot of strength and was able to be and to lead the others. So take a look and read through this. It takes only a few minutes when you get back home, and because this shows you a different kind of a leader. Okay, but a manager. What would be a manager? Now another video clip, and listen carefully to what they have to say.
Hello and welcome back to FT Business School. With management without helping people do their best work, never quite be fair. It's so difficult to achieve. Really do appreciate Professor's strategic and also commercial contributions. If you learn to describe and understand,
Well, it just has to be like this.
For the last 3 years, and I've also been doing, shall we say, management as part of my job in business. And I've come to view management as a somewhat being management of a team as a somewhat unnatural. And what I mean by that is that the attributes of what good management look like are well known. We know that good managers should be given lots of space. We should be giving them worthwhile kinds of projects to do. We should be giving them support when needed. We should give them a pat on the back when they do a good job. And yet, study after study shows that, on average, many managers fail to deliver. There's a kind of a gap between what they know we should do and with what we actually do. And the reason for that, I believe, is essentially that so many of the things that we kind of learn to do as individuals working in companies push push us towards kind of keeping control to ourselves, taking credit for the things that we've done, and essentially being the boss in every respect. And yet good management is about giving power away, giving credit to others. And that's why it's such an unnatural attitude. Also, that's the big difference. Well, exactly, and essentially, as you get, the more senior you get, the more you have to unlearn the behaviours that got you to where you are, and learn a whole bunch of new things, which is about learning to let go, learning to try to give people, the scope, the latitude to figure things out for themselves. It's not too much.
So is it part of the problem that people do get appointed to positions where they can't do the job?
And then indeed there's a significant chunk of people who, the old Peter principle, we get promoted to a position of incompetence. Essentially, there are some people who never should be managers, who should never have been appointed and should not have accepted the job. There's another chunk, and this is probably the majority, who can, if they really want to, learn to do the job. And part of what I do in my book, of course, is I try to give people some tips for figuring out how to do it. And a lot of it comes down to self-awareness, to understanding our own limitations, our own kind of behavioral biases, if you like, that get in the way of helping people around us to do their jobs well.
Okay, and are there some examples of those biases that you propose about things that lots of managers have, or is it very individual?
It is individual, but a couple of common ones. One is, of course, this control bias, this preference for micromanaging, for making sure that you are taking pieces. And that is dangerous. And many of the most well-known failures of the humans in this world over the last 50 years have had there's also this bias, if you like, for trusting your gut and your gut way. This idea that somehow executives know everything and somehow their intuition tells them the way out. Sometimes that works, but more often than not, hard analysis is the basis for our decisions. And when to trust your gut and when to make the right decisions through analysis is a really difficult thing.
So, if you could give one tip to managers about how to be better managers adopt today, what would you say?
So, I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
First is a worldview change, which is to see the world through the eyes of your own employees. Now, we've talked about that for years, but the idea that we should try to get into the minds of what our employees are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. There's actually quite a way of doing it. So there's a kind of perceptual shift that is to be done. And then the second one is really about finding one thing. Tomorrow you can find one thing where you can give away some power when Tony Blair becomes Prime Minister. First thing you do is to give the power of monetary policy away to the Obviously that's a big shift on a much more scale. Every one of us can think of one kind of symbolic way of giving the business. Maybe it's changing our offices, maybe it's changing the nature of the whereby we're saying, here is some way of showing people around that
All right. What was the difference? I've put up here a few words. Power, first of all. He also talked about power. Control. Controlling others. Control in the meaning making sure that people do whatever they're supposed to do. And he also talked about doing it yourself as a problem. Because, as we grow up, as we sort of develop in our work, we are getting used to do more and more tasks ourselves. So we become, as individuals, quite capable. But then suddenly we are managers. And the manager is not supposed to do everything himself, is he? Because then he's closing out, basically, on the others. And then he talked about the view. How should you actually address the issue? You should look at it from the eyes of the staff member. But anyway, let's just take this power word and what is the leader doing with power and what is the manager doing with power? Anyone? It's not the... Anyone? Yes? Okay. Okay. The leader takes it, keeps it. So basically the leader is taking power while the manager is giving it away. Two people. That's a tricky thing for many people, to give away power, give away responsibility, decision-making authority. That is for many managers absolutely, let's say, almost impossible. And that means they are no good managers. They should not have taken on tasks as a manager. He talked about the Peters principle. You get promoted on and on and on until you reach a position which you are absolutely not competitive to do, because you're always taking on tasks which you are not, don't have the qualifications to do. So I hope you see the differences here in terms of what is a leader, or characterizing a leader, what should a leader be doing, and what should a manager be doing. Let's take a further look based on what the textbook says. Managing is coping with complexity. I mean, obviously, you are in the daily routine, daily work, daily business, and everything can come up. And the leader is not devoted to all the tiny details of running a company. The leader, for example, might be the chairman of the board. He is not getting involved in all the details of daily business. But that is the manager's job. So managing is coping with complexity, formulate plans and objectives, monitor results, control. Again, make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to do. For a project manager, he should or she should be handing out tasks to those in the group, those in the team, and making sure they are delivering. Take corrective actions, follow the expected activities, solve technical problems. Sometimes a manager needs to go down to the micro level of things and basically solve problems that in the beginning were supposed to be done by someone in the team. Serve as a peacemaker. If a problem comes up in the group or in the team or in the company, it's the manager's job to solve it. Make trade-offs among time, cost, and project scope. If you run into a problem with those 3 or 4 basic elements, which every project is about, balancing time, cost, and the scope, resources, etc. If that problem comes about, then it is the project manager's responsibility to fix it. So you can see these are all sort of action-based, tasks. Then leading is coping with change. Being a leader is someone who sees into the future in the way that he can sort of create a vision for something. We are now running a business, and this is the situation we are in, says the leader, and in the next 5 years we are going to be developing our company into a completely different position. And then the leader explains in very, sort of clear way what this vision is about, and all the staff members follow because they believe in it. They see it and they believe in it. That is how a leader sort of takes power over the situation. The leader recognizes the need to change in order to keep the project on track. Just imagine a leader of a company who never thinks there will be any changes in the environment. I mean, what happens to companies like that? If they're not on their toes constantly, following what is happening in the external environment, opportunities or threats, they're going to be left behind, like a sleeping dinosaur, as we sometimes call it. So the leader realizes what is happening in the environment and initiates change, talks for change, provides direction and motivation. Direction. This is where we're going. Motivation. How are we going to get there? Innovates and adapts as necessary, of course, and integrates assigned resources. These elements can be found, as I said in the beginning, in the same person, but it's rare. Normally you will have a project manager who is a leader, and then then you will also have a project manager who is more of a manager than a leader. So in that case, you would need to substitute with someone who is also a leader or has those skills. Now, if we can sort of identify the main tasks of a project manager, we will say manages planning and execution of a project. That is, of course, the responsibility of the project manager. And the project manager is responsible for performance. Is responsible for key decisions. Acts independently. Marshals resources. Controls the resources. Controls people. Decides when we are going to use those people and those, trucks or bulldozers or whatever we are needing for our project. That is the, decision of the project manager. He controls that. Provides direction and coordination for the team. So, under those few points lies everything a project manager should be doing in any project. But there are contradictions. So nothing is sort of fixed or made it's the same always. First of all, at the same time, a project manager needs to be innovative, find solutions, come up with suggestions and sort of encourage for creative atmosphere. You also need to maintain stability. If you're running a project, you cannot allow the group to be constantly innovating, constantly changing the path, changing directions. You need to stick to the direction, but you need to be able to sort of innovate and give space for a bit thinking out of the box. Maybe you should have a certain meetings once in a while. Okay, now we have a brainstorming meeting. We are going to go out of the box, thinking about, is there any different way we can implement this part of the project? But you're following the main line. See the big picture while getting your hands dirty, meaning basically you have to go into the project sometimes and do detailed work on certain parts of it, but at the same time you always see the big picture. You as a project manager can never forget what is the project about, what have we promised the client to deliver. You can never forget that. And even if you have to go into, as I said, into details on certain parts, you must always make sure that those details and that sort of creative work is done within the big picture. So it's hands off and hands on. You have to be flexible and firm. You have to be team focused. You are running a team, but you also have to see what are the benefits for the organization, and you also have to be looking for the individual. If an individual on your team is having a problem, you have to be good enough to spot it and sense it. Is it a personal problem? Is it a professional problem? What is bothering the team member that is definitely not showing the required results or the results or the behavior as has been done before or should be? Then you have to step in. Not necessarily as a psychologist or something like that, but you have to be caring and sort of realizing what is the situation. And that is a different line. It is a very different line if you, as a project manager, becomes friendly, or let's say goes down to a certain level and becomes caring and becomes supportive and actually becomes involved in, let's say, personal problems of someone on the team. Let's say someone is actually going through a divorce or something, not delivering full let's say, capacity and full work. What should you do? You should not get involved. You should support the person. Maybe even put the person aside, because it might be such a big problem that particular person is going through that you would need a replacement. It's a tricky line. It's a very, very sort of tricky thing to do, to be firm and sort of keep the face as a manager, but at the same time go down to the level where you are becoming personally sort of caring and supporting to those in the team. And this is especially the case in dedicated project teams, because then you're only working with the same group of people for months and months, and you are bound to learn something about their private life, about their personal issues, and you have to be very careful where you draw the line. So here's a quote from the textbook. Instead of working with my people to complete the project, I found myself being constantly pulled and tugged by demands of different groups of people who were not directly involved in the project but had a vested interest in the outcome. Someone is there describing the role of the stakeholders, because they are out there somewhere, they are following, they are waiting, they are learning about the project. They might not, meet with you, maybe not even once during the whole process, but they are aware of you, aware of the project, they are constantly waiting. And once again, the number of stakeholders can be quite many, or let's say quite big. Here you have the project manager, and then of course the team. You have the project, you have the top management in the company, you might have other organizations, you have sponsors, you have customers, functional managers. If you're running a project in a big company, there are different functions. You have contractors whom you schedule in at certain times, which we actually went through when we went through the previous chapter on scheduling. You have administrative support. You might even have to talk to some government agencies, etc. The list of stakeholders can be very long. And you as a project manager should, in the beginning, draw up a picture of all the stakeholders that you identify in the beginning of a project and constantly sort of edit that list. Here is, for example, something I did when I started working for the, I know this is in Icelandic, so I'll translate the main things here. I was working for a regional business development company some years ago in the Westfjords of Iceland, and I listed up what I felt were the immediate stakeholders. And if we just take a look, there was a union of all the Westfjords that was one of the owners, so that was clearly one of the stakeholders. There is a big institution that covers the regional and the rural areas of Iceland. That institution was here, and other regional business development companies as well. The ministry and the previous Minister of Industry, institutions on innovation, support, etc. Everything that had to do with the business environment we were working in. Universities, the municipalities, the shareholders, even the president of Iceland. I listed him up there as a stakeholder because at a certain point in time we would be needing to inform him about what is happening in terms of business development in the Westfjords of Iceland. And in fact, once he came to visit us during a kind of a exhibition on new business opportunities. Media, foreign, whoever, could be foreign universities, could be foreign funds. The people in the Westfjords, also a stakeholder, because there were at the time living 7,000 people in the and companies. This one here, 7,000 people living in the Westfjords, and I said to my staff, don't forget there are 7,000 people watching whatever we are doing, because that focus was always there. How is the regional business development company doing? What are they, creating? What are they, and how are they spending the money, etc. So be sure to realize that there is a long list sometimes of stakeholders which you as a project manager need to be aware of. And then, as we go on into later, you have to define and develop a plan how to communicate with all of them. I have a very good book which is called Never Eat Alone, and that's a book written by someone who became an extremely powerful networker. He was constantly meeting with people, constantly exchanging ideas. And this is something that you might also have to keep in mind, because you might actually be using, for example, lunch meetings. Lunch meetings are sometimes misunderstood. Many people think they're just a waste of time or an excuse to go out and have something to eat, but quite frequently they are actually used to exchange information about a project, even to define a project, and etc. And then, when you're building your network, you have certain ways to do that. You have ways to create goodwill, you have ways to create connections. Bless you. We have not yet talked about the cultural issues, not so much, but when we do, at the end, we will talk about something called business cards. How many of you have, how many of you have a business card? Maybe no one, because you're all university students. But in your work, you have all been working somewhere. How many had a business card? Okay. We will go through that later. There are many ways how you present it, like bowing and then receiving it. But what is a business card? What is this basically? Yeah. Contact information, name, position, name of the company, yes. When you're building a network, and in your future work, when you start working as project managers or whatever role, you will be meeting with people and you will be exchanging business cards. You're absolutely right. It is, first of all, your name. But for many cultures, the most important thing is not necessarily your name, because we forget it anyway, just quickly, unless we have that sort of developed that skill to remember names of people we meet. But it is the position you have, the rank, structure, hierarchy. Are you a representative? Are you a lower, let's say, level person in that sense? Or are you a CEO? Or are you a manager? Because the higher up, of course, the more authority you have to make decisions. And that is what many people who receive a business card are looking for. Okay, this is the name, but where is the title? What's the title says? Where is this person in the rank? While we are talking about business card, you should treat it carefully, because it in the future might be a key to a certain company. This is a valuable information, actually. So I always keep mine in something like this. You can buy this, and sometimes if you're in business delegations, a hotel will give you something like this. But I always keep it in a small wallet like this. I also keep something else here, which is has actually put me in trouble once. But when you're dealing in different cultures, there is always this danger that you might eat something which is not good for you. I don't know about you, but I like to eat different kind of food. I like to try out something that is very rare and new to me. So I always keep here something to stop problems if they arise in my stomach. So I keep those kind of pills, because everyone should take it with them on a business trip, but it's no good to keep it at the hotel if you're having a meeting in the city and suddenly something starts happening in your stomach. So keep it with you. Just be sure to, don't, when you pull out your business card, don't let the pills fall on the table, because that might look a bit awkward. That has happened to me and wasn't really helping me. So, when you are sort of building a cooperative network, there are many ways, and I'm not going to go into the details here, but I'm going to, we talk about, currencies. We talk about a certain sort of system, basically, how you create and build up a cooperative network. I leave it for you to read about that, but we have to sort of realize that in business and in, when you are building up this kind of a network, you are doing something for someone in return for something else later on. One good deed deserves another, and likewise, one bad deserves another. It's a law of reciprocity. And we also talk about influence currencies. You can actually help to promote someone through various currencies. It's a bit strange word for that, but if you read it carefully, then you will understand what it is about. Cooperative relationships are built on the exchange of organizational currencies. We can also talk about favors. If I mention you to the board, to the CEO as a very capable person, and you should actually be, considered as the next project manager, I'm using that kind of, I'm sort of using a professional currency, supporting you in a professional manner, putting in a word, basically. And when we talk about those influencing using those currencies, we are talking about task, position, inspiration, relationship, and personal. And just quickly, what we are talking about. When you're creating a goodwill, you are helping by doing something for someone, and you expect that person to do something for you instead. sometimes that kind of thing reminds me of the mafia as it was in the old days when they were helping each other out. Then the mafia developed into something really ugly, which isn't really what it was supposed to be. Task-related currencies, position-related currencies. As the example I just mentioned, suggesting someone for a position. You're helping that person to grow and to develop by talking about the professional background and suggesting for a person for a position. Inspiration, relationship, personal related. Read through this and just be familiar with the different types of currencies. It's a bit strange word. Can also talk about it as favors, but be familiar with the differences. However, the project manager will be influential only insofar as he can offer something that others value. You have to be careful when you're doing this, because if you're suggesting constantly something to someone and it doesn't have any value, then you're downgrading yourself in the eyes of that other person. So you must be suggesting something of a value. Don't just promote someone just because that someone has asked you to. It has to be a value behind it. Now, identifying stakeholders. Back to the issue of stakeholders. I leave it for you to read about the currencies, but back to the issue of stakeholders. One of my, you can say, most expensive in terms of professional mistakes, expensive experience, was to not realize the nature of different stakeholders. When I took on a certain project, I knew there were a lot of stakeholders I had to communicate with, but I did not go into details about how shall I talk to this person, how often shall I deliver and give status reports to that person. I was a project manager, but I wasn't really sort of approaching the stakeholders as they should, or as I should. So you have to identify whose cooperation will you need to succeed with that particular project, because some people might be more influential than others, and if you let's say invest in relationship with them, then it might help you later on when you need some help for your project. Whose agreements or approval will be needed, whose opposition would keep us from accomplishing the project. This is a very important point, because I have actually learned by my own experience that if you don't value this, if you don't sort of, or let's say if you underestimate this point, then those persons who actually feel then left behind, you haven't informed them well enough or often enough about the progress of the project, they will actually hit you in the back. Don't think that there is everything nice out there. It's all kinds of sort of internal conflicts. So you also, at the same time you realize who can help you succeed, you also have to realize who can actually prevent you from succeeding. And remember from the movie Godfather, how many of you haven't seen The Godfather? We have all seen The Godfather, right? You haven't? Okay, so 2 movies for the next few days. Braveheart and The Godfather. There are many actually teachers who have used The Godfather as a teaching material, because so much of the philosophy is actually used in management teaching. And when it comes to this one, identify those who have actually positioned to prevent you from succeeding. What should you do with those people? And that refers to a quote in The Godfather. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. So always keep them as close to you as possible. So if there is someone constantly, making questions or against whatever you are talking about, and you are running a company and there are, different sort of working groups, well, make that person in charge of the most important working group. Keep him or her very close to you. Give out responsibility so that that person can actually realize, okay, if I don't do this, then it's not only he who will fail, it's also me. All right, evaluate relationship. What differences exist between the team and those on whom the team will depend? How do stakeholders view the project? many things that you have to realize in terms of who are the stakeholders before you even start the project. What is the status of our relationship with the stakeholders? What source of influence does the team have to have relative to the stakeholders? So once again, it's very important to keep track of those. Here we can see a sort of suggested, we can say, map how you can put up on and identify stakeholder influences and dependency matrices. Just take a look at this. There are many maps like this, or guide lists, or things like that, just to help you get the necessary overview. Last time I talked about something, or I think it was last time, I talked about something that refers to the fact that you have to have a credit or build up goodwill before you approach someone who is supposed to be important for you in terms of making a project succeed. So foster relationship before they are needed. Remember when we were talking about you were driving to this project status meeting, and you had a technical problem, and you wouldn't tell, or you would tell. And we were thinking about, who and some of you actually said it's always best to be honest, but others said, well, if we are confident that we can solve the problem, we won't tell. But I think we agreed that you should have told your client that there was a problem, but you were on top of it, that there is no reason for or no need to interact. But if you had never approached your client before, if you had never invested in any relationship with that client before, then you would not have had the credit, because this is something that is very important. You must foster the relationship before you need it. You must have informed on a regular basis, make sure that this stakeholder or your client was well informed at all times, and then when you actually need the client to act in your favor, precisely as you want the client to act, then you better have had sort of invested in this relationship or in this goodwill. So frequent face-to-face interaction is very good. I was once working in a company, and the CEO, it was a fish processing company. The offices were on the second floor and the processing plant on the first floor. And the CEO would show up at 8:15 in the morning and go into his office, get a cup of coffee, and then go down to the processing hall, because they start early, sometimes even before 8, if there was a lot of work. And he would spend 20-30 minutes, more or less until 9 o'clock, just walking with his coffee, talking to people, sometimes on personal notes, like asking, how was the last weekend when you were moving and changing flats, and how did everything go well, etc. But what did he gain from this? What do you think he gained from this? Anyone? Respect, absolutely. Anything else? He gained respect from the people that were working there, and normally they knew he was up there on the second floor, but they never expected to see him maybe once every day. And if they did, then not necessarily to talk to them, But he did. He gained a lot of respect. But he also gained something else. What do you think was the other thing? Sorry? Humanity. Humanity. Okay, humanity, yeah? Yes, that's a good point. Sometimes we feel the leaders are not human. But he became very human. Yes, something else? It's all true what you mentioned, but what else? Of course, he gained information about the operation. He got a feel for the business. What was happening? How are we going? How are we developing? He saw the raw material. He saw the quality of it. So he got the feeling for the business. So he was on top of things. At the same time, he created respect for his for him personally, showing care and going down to that level and talking to people, not once a week, but more or less every day. Build trust and lead by example. We talk about that when we talk about company cultures, that sometimes we have such a strong leaders that they actually create a culture in themselves. Like Richard Branson, for example. He's a very powerful person in terms of appearance. He's known for being adventurous and a bit crazy, and he is leading, he's running his company in that spirit, and then he's sort of influencing his staff members to be not necessarily as crazy, but also creative, adventurous, fun. You know, it has an effect on the company culture. So he, as a leader, is actually affecting the way the others work. In sort of talking about leading by example, I'm going to give you a brief story about a good friend of mine, a Swiss person living in Malaysia. He moved to Malaysia when he was 37, I think, and that was in 1986 when he started working for a big, I think it was Dutch or Swiss trading company. I think it was Dutch. Anyway, it had, at the point in time when he started, 120 staff members, sale about 15 million US, 3 departments, marketing, finance, and sale. He was hired as a marketing manager. He moved with his family to Malaysia. He liked it immediately, the atmosphere, the food, the people, the sun and the heat and everything. He made 2 personal goals. He said first of all, he said, in few years' time, I'm going to be, before I turn 40, I think it was 37 at the time, before I turn 40, I'm going to be running this company, and before I turn 50, I hope to have earned enough money to retire. That was his sort of personal goal. But he and his character was, of course, of the nature that he never retired. Unfortunately, he died far too early, but that's a different story. He became a managing director within 7 months. So he gained and achieved his first goal much earlier than he expected, because the previous manager was found guilty of not doing everything correctly in terms of bookkeeping. The company was going down. He was now the new managing director. The company was going down. And he said to himself, okay, how can I turn this around? He had from the very beginning showed up very early in the mornings. He worked late. So after he became managing director, he didn't change that at all. He did not dress formally. It was, of course, nice suit and shirt, but no tie, not necessarily, unless, of course, during meetings. In Asia, you always have to wear a tie. Most often black and white, if you are especially in Japanese culture or business culture. So he, after being managing director for a few months, he called for a staff meeting. He was actually spending time in his canteen with the others, eating with chopsticks, and basically socializing a lot with staff members. So after a few months, after he had taken over, he had identified in his mind the strategy he wanted to do to turn the company around. So he had a big staff meeting, and he said, this is how I'm going to turn this company around. We need to work hard. We need to, do this and that. Those who are with me, you can stay. The others, if you don't agree or not willing to take on this task, you can leave now, and we solve your retirement payments and everything. No, no hard feelings, but you can leave if you don't want to take the bother. No one left. They all stayed because they had seen how he worked. He was actually leading by example. He was showing care for the company, showing care for his people and interest. In 12 years, basically just before he was supposed to reach his second personal goal, he had turned the whole company around. They were now on the auction market. The turnover was multiplied by, I can't remember how many. It was a global company, 15 subsidiaries, gone public, wide range of areas, departments, etc. So it was basically a completely different company with 2,300 staff members. He did this with hard work, but he got the people with him because he had shown them prior to him becoming managing director, and the first few months after he was appointed managing director, he showed them that he was really in for this for real. So he gained their respect, and they all followed him, and they turned the whole thing around. So that was just a quick sort of story on how to lead by example. So if you want to become an effective project manager, you have to actually be able to do a lot of things. You have to have what we call a system thinking. You have to be a system thinker. See the whole thing. See the big picture. See process. Work in processes. And that is not easy, you know. You might be dealing with a very complex project, and you might be dealing with 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 such projects at the same time, even 40, as, for example, Emil told us. Elmar. Personal integrity. Obviously, if you are not a person who is in, let's say, good shape mentally, or you have some problems, drinking problems, etc., you might not be suited as a project manager. And you have to be reliable. You have to be sort of, you have to be the one that you all sort of automatically pick out as the leading person, as the strong one. Proactive. Why is that necessary for a project manager? Why is it necessary to be proactive? You have to stay on things. Yeah, you have to have initiative. Sometimes you have to have initiative to see other solutions, be daring enough and willing to step out of the box and say, okay, we are now going to change a bit our approach. This one isn't working, but still this is the project we are going to finish, and this is the final deliverable where we are going to go a bit different way. If you are reactive, you wouldn't be doing that. A reactive person always waits until something happens, and then the person starts to do something, to fix things. You are ahead of things when you are proactive. High emotional intelligence. Why is that? Why do you have to have high emotional intelligence? You know what that is, by the way? Emotional intelligence. Empathy, sympathy, and all those things. But you have to be that because you are dealing with people. And just the example I told you earlier, if someone is having a problem on your team, you have to be the one to spot it. You cannot be such a iron man or woman that you really are not affected by personal problems among the others. You have to spot it, you have to handle it, and you have to handle it quickly and correctly. So you have to have this sort of sensitivity towards how others are feeling. Because also, as I said, you know, you're not only dealing with the team, you're responsible for the team, but you're also responsible for the individuals on the team, that they are all functioning. It's not enough to see, you know, the outcome and say, well, the team is doing well, and then 2 out of 10 are feeling miserable. That would not be a good sort of reference about you as a project manager. General business perspective. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that you have to be a good accountant, but it does mean that you have to know the basics of business. You have to know how to read annual reports, the EBITDA, all those terms that you have heard about. You have to be able to read and analyze and sort of pull out necessary information, make estimates, etc., etc. You have to know the basics. Okay. Effective time management. Why and what does that mean? Of course, because time is one of the crucial elements of any project. So you have to use the time correctly. You have to utilize it correctly and manage it correctly. Not only yours, but also the others. And skillful politician, that is a very interesting word. What does that mean? A skillful politician. It does not mean that you're taking part in politics. It means that you have to feel, are there internal conflicts? Is someone on your team being backed up by someone at the board of the company because of personal connections? Those kind of politics. Is someone pushing persons into your team because of internal politics? And then finally, you have to be an optimist. I think that is obvious. If you have a project manager who is a pessimist and doesn't believe in anything they're doing, no, we are never going to reach this goal. We are going to spend so much money on this. It's going to be terrible. If you have that kind of a person, of course, it's a no good person. So you have to have those skills, plus many, many more. But in the textbook, you will find sort of supplement and more details on the skills that a project manager needs to have. So you can see it's not an easy task. It's absolutely not an easy task to be a project manager. It's something that requires a lot of skills. And to end up as our friend Elmar, to reach that status where you are responsible for huge sums of money in any project, of course, requires a lot of experience, and you have to sort of deliver all those capabilities. Okay, last slide, as usual. What is the main difference between managing and leading? How would you describe a good project manager? And of course, many other questions possible from this chapter. For example, about the currencies. How do you create your network? Why are stakeholders so important? How do you identify and how do you treat the different types of stakeholders? Those kind of questions are very likely exam questions. Okay, now we have reached the end of chapter 10, and since no one has read the case, then we have a strange situation. I think I turn off the recording.